All right. And then Alyssa, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Gabby. Hi, everyone. Alyssa Chatterjee. Great to be here with you all today. This month is just flying by. Wanted to share a couple of quick updates with you. So first, on kind of hiring. So we are in the process of getting ready to recruit for Hillary's replacement. We are going to go ahead and put that position basically back out as is to keep that moving as quickly as possible. We are looking internally with the departure of Serena as our deputy director at just our internal organizational structure. We'd had to put together our best guess at our organizational structure back in late 2021 in order to prepare for the 22 legislative session. And now that we actually have a COO and have started up some of the functions that we now own as DELC, we're seeing some opportunities for improvement in efficiency. And so we want to make sure we're kind of clear on our structure to then know what we need out of a deputy director. So somebody will be coming along, but that's why we haven't put out a recruitment for that position right away. Similarly, sort of related to that, we are evaluating the community systems team. One of the things that we've heard from our own staff as well as from CCRNRs is that keeping the CCRNR team with the professional learning team really works and makes sense since that is such a core function of the CCRNRs, which leaves a fairly small team with community systems. And so for those hub directors who've been here a while, I know you've seen hubs live in a variety of places in our agency, and we're working to kind of figure out what the right best fit is. And so that's why we have not moved forward with recruiting for a community systems director yet. But I am working really closely with Maria, and we have put together what we're calling a system of support approach for Maria, who is new and has stuck with us through these changes. And so Teresa Waite and Don Woods, as well as Margie McNabb, are coming alongside Maria to provide kind of varying levels of coaching, support, expertise as she continues in this role. And I am meeting with that team regularly as well so that Maria is getting the support she needs and making sure you all are getting your needs met as well. So while we don't have those positions filled yet, wanted you to know that we have been working on our own infrastructure to keep the work moving. Related to that, I think you all have heard the Early Learning Council's real focus on hubs, and obviously that is throughout the Raise Up Oregon system plan and related to some of their key goals. But we'll be continuing to work with the council as well as with you all as hubs to more clearly define what your role should be, really looking back at the last 10 plus years and how hubs were initially created versus where we are now, and how we as an agency can be putting forward grant agreements, key performance measures, rulemaking, and accountability that actually fits with the purpose and function of hubs in alignment with some of the Early Learning Council's goals and objectives. The last piece I just wanted to share, and I know we've gotten some questions about it, is on the Birth Through 5 Early Literacy Plan. So the legislature decided to hold back the Birth Through 5 funds as well as the community and tribal funds with ODE. I think I want to name the double standard that is for dollars targeting communities of color versus dollars that go to districts, and the additional hoops that communities of color are asked to jump through that white dominant culture organizations are not. So we're working with the governor's office and with ODE on putting together a proposal pending legislative approval. This plan has to be submitted by the end of the calendar year. And our plan right now is there's $9.4 million for the Birth Through 5 Literacy Fund. The other 600,000 is what they decided to use to pay for the two positions necessary to do this work. And we're proposing a split between Kindergarten Partnership and Innovation and the Early Childhood Equity Fund. So we in terms of rulemaking, Begonia, right now we've not identified a need for additional rulemaking because we plan to use existing funding streams. We're in the early stages of figuring out whether there will be more explicit allowable uses and whether that has to be defined in rule as well as the grant agreements, or could just be defined in the grant agreements. And we our work will have to bring this forward to the legislature for approval. So if it's approved, we're not going to see these dollars until probably March. So they won't really go out the door best case until April. On the equity fund, we are planning to do another request for applications so that both existing grantees and prospective grantees have access to the funding. This is the area, I think, in particular, where we may have some rulemaking needed to make sure we're capturing some of those early literacy activities. KPI, our plan has been to distribute those dollars using the existing funding formula across all hubs. However, we have noticed that several hubs' quarterly reports are not including any KPI data. So I also wanted to just do a plug to please be filling out that part of your quarterly reports. I think in addition to the PSU surveys, one of the opportunities we have with these dollars is to be able to tell the story about what early literacy looks like when we're talking about birth through 5. And it is not just mailing a book, right? And so there's so much beautiful work happening in KPI, but this also means there's going to be renewed scrutiny and a spotlight. I think especially with the legislative turnover, a lot of legislators don't even know that KPI exists, right? And so it's going to be more important than ever that we're able to demonstrate that we're being good stewards of these funds, that we're collecting the data that we need to be able to be responsive to the legislature. And so just wanted to put that plug out so that we can, yes, Begonia, we are getting some financial information, but not necessarily the narrative. So we need to be able to explain how these dollars are being used, especially because with birth through 5, again, it looks so different than it does or could look in K-12. So those narrative pieces are really important, so that we can hopefully get these dollars in the short session and then be able to leverage our existing funding formula to get those out the door to you all. So I will share more as that progresses. We are in the draft stages right now of working with the Department of Education and the governor's office on that plan. But as soon as that is completed, we will be sharing that with you all, and would be happy to also talk about how you want to participate in the legislative process and really can tell your stories about what KPI has done for community and for families. Any questions about that? And Margie, yes, absolutely great point, that the cyclical nature of this work. And I think we just want to make sure we're able to tell the full story. And if the legislature is asking for us to point to what we collect, that we can do that. Begonia.
Alicia, we actually talked once before about the turnover. If DELC is actually taking a look at the exit interviews, and if you guys are identifying that, for instance, benefits are not competitive, or is the salary, or is the lack of opportunities to move up, or it's just like a normal cycle that is trend that is happening right now across the United States. So are you working with HR to increase retention? And how does it look like?
Yeah, Begonia, we are. I think a few things. Yes, turnover is a natural part of any organization. And in many cases, folks are leaving for growth opportunities. And as a government agent, we can't do promotions, we can't do bonuses, we can't renegotiate salaries. So sometimes those are the reasons. Other times there's culture fits, or there are sometimes performance issues. So it's not a straight across the board. We've been talking a lot about how we're celebrating some of these changes, because in most cases, it's because somebody is moving on to a better opportunity. And it's really validating that we can give somebody the professional learning and growth to be able to use those skills somewhere else. We would much prefer to grow them where we can, but we don't always have the positions. And one of the things we're trying to do with this reorganization kind of process is figure out how do we create more internal growth opportunities. We are a fairly top-heavy organization. And so how do we build some of those middle positions to help folks kind of climb the ladder and grow? And that'll also be really important for succession planning, which is something that the governor has put forward. All agencies have to have a succession plan by the end of the year. And so this is another kind of key part of, if good succession planning should allow us to leverage the internal expertise, knowledge, and capacity. And I think that's definitely an area we have to improve upon. Thanks for that, Begonia. Any other questions? Thank you. And obviously, Maria will be back next week if you need anything else, and you'll have Gabby and Karina's info as well. And happy to answer any other questions I can.
Thanks, Alyssa. All right. And then just kind of wanted to turn it over to you to see if there's any updates or good news for coming from any of you that you all would like to share, either in the chat or feel free to come off mute. Is there anything going on that folks would like to share out with the group?
Yeah.
Gabby, I can reply to the Imagination Library funds. Margie, we're in the process of working with DOJ and procurement sort of on next steps with those dollars. So, they won't be available this year, but because this was a weird case of the legislature creating a program in a budget note as opposed to through the normal statutory process, it's sort of complicated how we go forward with actually moving those dollars out the door.
Yeah, Margie, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, a question related to that. Could the ELD or DELC be working on the criteria for how they would be allocated while you're in the solicitation process for who the nonprofit would be? Many of us are doing a lot of fundraising for expansion of that program right now, anticipating matching funds, but we're feeling a little vulnerable as we're working with county commissioners and many nonprofits who are really helping us expand this work tremendously. But the leverage of being able to see their matching funds is a very powerful tool. So if there could be a group that's working on that criteria while you're working on the solicitation to select the party that will be doing the distribution, that would be super helpful.
Thanks, Margie. Happy to check back with the team. My understanding is, again, because this was developed as a line item, I don't believe we will be establishing any criteria, and the administration really is falling on the nonprofit that is selected. So they would be leading the process for determining all of that. We don't actually have the capacity or the authority to actually fully administer the program because of how it was created.
That would be really different than what my 36 years of state service had been in the past. And yes, that was a decade ago, but I hadn't really seen anything that would, by procurement or whatever, change that tremendously. So I would hope there would be some flexibility there. Again, we're working really hard. It's being very well received by our communities, but we're kind of on hold on a part of this.
Yeah, happy to follow up, Margie. This is a pretty unique circumstance. DOJ actually couldn't really find a lot of other examples of a program getting created as a budget note without having the statutory reference to refer back to. So that is creating unique challenges. And that also means we didn't get any position capacity to be able to administer a new program. So we're working right now on getting everything through the DOJ kind of roadblocks to get that RFP out the door and get that nonprofit selected as is outlined in the budget note. But Margie, happy to have our kind of team reach out to you on how that's developing and where we will and won't have a role in administering this program within our current statutory authority.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, just last call if there's any shout outs that the group wants to share. Good news, anything happening within your hub. Okay. Then with that, let me go ahead and pass things over to Allison Delory and Naja Goli, who are joining us to give you all a union update.
Thanks, Gabby. If it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. I have some slides for today.
Yeah, let me know if it doesn't let you, Allison.
I think it's going to let me.
Okay.
Let's see. Here we go. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So like Gabby said, I'm Allison Delory. I am here to talk to you about the AFSCME Childcare Providers Together collective bargaining agreement. Some of you were at a meeting earlier today and saw a longer version of this presentation. It will be shorter, so thanks for hanging in there with me. There's a longer agenda. I can share all of the slides with you. We won't cover everything in this meeting. And as a high-level overview, the collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME is between the Department of Administrative Services, their labor relations unit, and AFSCME Childcare Providers Together, Local 132. So the DAS portion covers DELC, all divisions and offices, and AFSCME is representing licensed family childcare providers, so certified family and registered family providers. And the bargaining unit member is just the provider listed on the CCLD license. It is not their staff members if they're a CF that have members as they're a CF that has staff members as well. And want to give Naja a chance to introduce herself and talk about her role. Naja, I thought I saw you earlier. Go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. So as the Department of Administrative Services State Labor Relations Manager, I've been assigned to this contract, or SEIU and AFSCME childcare contracts, for the last couple of years. And so I had 2021 and 2023 now to act as the chief spokesperson in bargaining. So that's one of my primary duties. One of the other duties that we spend quite a bit of time on, I work through this by coordinating with Allison, is to work on grievances. We get quite a handful of grievances, a couple a week on a regular basis. Sometimes those end up going to, they can get advanced to mediation. They can also be advanced to arbitration. And in those cases, then I work with, sometimes I work with DOJ to handle settlements. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just work with the agency. But that is the primary responsibility of the State Labor Relations Manager. And I'm so pleased to be working alongside with Allison. She does a wonderful job of maintaining the relationship with the union. It is a two-person job, and we're working on it pretty well together. So thank you for the opportunity to bring me in today and to give you a little bit of a description as to what I do for the childcare sector.
Thanks, Naja. And my role is the labor liaison for DELC. This is a new position I started in August of 2021. So I'm working closely with Naja, making sure that DELC is remaining in compliance with our collective bargaining agreements. But I'm also just a point person for the unions if they have questions, if they need resources, helping them to problem solve. I kind of their go-to person as well. And is it gonna let me? There we go. Today we are meeting with you because we wrapped up 2023 midterm negotiations recently and are just kind of providing internal and external partners updates about where we've landed. So the current collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME is from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2025. And we bargain with AFSCME every 2 years. So 2023 was our midterm negotiation, and that means we open up Article 5 about the ERDC subsidy rates, and that aligns with the market price study that you're all familiar with. And then each party can open up 3 additional articles. So we bargained from March until early July. We reached a tentative agreement on July 8th, and then the union voted to ratify the contract on September 16th of 2023. We are waiting on the final copy of the collective bargaining agreement, and I can share that with you all soon so that you have the full contract that's up to date, and then we will bargain again in 2025. So I'll walk through the things that did change from this summer, and then happy to answer any questions you have about those. And we'll also share some recent letters of agreement that are not in the collective bargaining agreement, but are just as important. So Article 5 is our article about the ERDC subsidy rates. As you know, these rates will change on January 1st of 2024, and we landed at the 80th percentile of the 2022 market price study. And we also changed some language in this article just to make it more clear for our processes. We had language about business days and language about billing forms needing to be processed within 3 to 4 business days. Excuse me, but we did not define those things. So definitions were added. We have a new letter of agreement. This was one of the articles that the state opened up or brought to the table, basically just covering the creation of DELC. There are so many references in the contract to OCC and ELD and ODE, ODHS. So for now, we just have this letter of agreement that says there's a new organizational structure. We are the same people. You are the same union and bargaining unit. In 2025, we'll make all of those changes in the full contract. We also amended Article 8, which is about the grievance procedure. We added a new section related to information requests. So if the union is submitting an information request and it's related to a potential grievance, that needs to go directly to Nadja as the DAS Labor Relations Manager. This was a practice that we'd been following. It just wasn't in the contract, so that was added in. And we also extended the grievance timeline. Previously, the state needed to respond within 15 calendar days, and it's now 21 calendar days. We have a new letter of agreement, or LOA, as we refer to it. This is the Health Benefits Standing Joint Labor Management Committee, very long title. In 2021 bargaining, we had a healthcare exploratory committee that was looking at options for healthcare for childcare providers. And that committee wrote a report in September 2022 that just highlighted, here's what some other states are doing. It was really high level research. This year in bargaining, the union really wanted some funding for healthcare benefits for their providers. We did not have any additional funding, but did agree that we would have another work group that has a bit of a narrower scope. We will have 5 union representatives and 5 state representatives meeting once per month, starting this month, and furnishing a report at the end of May that will include detailed analysis, total cost projections, and implementation considerations to help get us a little bit closer to health benefits for this bargaining unit. We also amended our retirement benefits letter of agreement. Again, this is something from 2021. For the past couple of years, we've been working closely with Oregon Treasury. The union received $5 million in one-time ARPA funding for retirement security in 2021. And we had a committee saying, like, okay, how do we disperse this? how do we get this money to providers and ensure that it goes towards their retirement security? So we landed on Oregon Saves, and the amendment to the LOA this year really just adds in all the criteria that our committee established. There's no additional funding, but it just kind of details who's eligible for this $5 million and how we'll get it out to them. This is a benefit. The enrollment just opened on October 11th. Enrollment will close on December 11th. So AFSCME is actively promoting this right now so that everybody who signs up for Oregon Saves will get an even portion of the $5 million when we do our distribution in early 2024. I'm going to pause before we go on to the recent letters of agreement. Are there any questions about those contract changes from 2023?
Al, there was a question in the chat. Is there a link to the information about applying for the funding?
Yes, I will put that in the chat. So that there's sort of like one point of information. We're sending everybody to the Child Care Providers Together website, but we helped to translate some frequently asked questions documents, and there's lots of resources there. So I'll add that in for you. Any other questions? Okay, feel free to unmute because I can't see you all. So recent letters of agreement. So like I said before, these are like binding agreements that are just outside of the contract. And that's because they were either dealt with outside of bargaining or outside of the bargaining timeline, but just as important that we're maintaining compliance. There is a letter of agreement about provider engagement from May 2023. And this outlines that first, that we will engage with providers to help with research and services, program development across a variety of formats. So we could be doing surveys or interviews or focus groups. And then specifically with surveys, we have agreed to send draft surveys to the union to get their feedback on messaging, and they will respond to us within 5 business days. We also said that providers will receive an incentive of up to $50 for their participation in these efforts. And there is no obligation to pay $50 for the union participating. This language is included in the letter of agreement so that we don't have to negotiate if there is a payment. We don't have to open that up with the union and say like, hey, can we pay up to $50? This just sort of covers it across the board if we are planning on incentivizing providers for their participation. And I see the chat lighting up, but I can't see what it says. Are there any questions, Gabby?
Yes.
Okay.
So there was one follow-up question to the link about applying for the funding. Is there different languages where folks can apply for the funding, or?
Great question. So the retirement benefit, Oregon Saves is available in, English and Spanish, but there's a phone line that can help other languages apply. And the FAQ document is available in, I think, 6 languages on the AFSCME site. And this is a benefit just for the CF and RF provider listed on the license. If that helps.
Thanks, Allison. And that was it. The other one was just a comment.
Okay, great. The next letter of agreement is about committees. So this one is pretty recent, just signed in October. This letter of agreement says that the union is invited to appoint 2 representatives to committees related to CF or RF licensing, professional development, and then ERDC and Spark. The representatives still need to apply to the committees, and that's both so that we have their information and can pay them if there's payment involved, but also so that they're accepting the terms and conditions of that committee. Sometimes we know there's time commitments or different things that we ask people to agree to. So they're still applying, but the union can now appoint for those specific topics. And then lastly, there is a letter of agreement about late billing form issuance. As some of you may know, House Bill 2468 has a late penalty payment when ERDC payments are paid late, and that goes back to that sort of processing language that we talked about before. So currently we need to pay providers within 3 to 4 business days of receiving a completed billing form. 2468 now says that if we do not pay them within 3 to 4 business days, there's a 9% penalty payment. This letter of agreement covers a potential delay on the other end of things. So if the provider is not receiving their billing form at the beginning of the month, it needs to be issued in advance of care beginning. So if that isn't happening, the union will send NAJA a list of impacted providers and then any documentation of financial impact of not receiving their billing form when they should have. And we have agreed to pay up to $450 per person per violation if this happens. And last piece of this one, this will expire on June 30th of 2025. And it expires then because we're hoping that by then the new provider management platform will be up and running. We will have worked out any kinks and we won't have to worry about billing forms being physically mailed to providers because it'll be a little more automated. Okay. Any questions about the letters of agreement or anything else? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Alison, I have a couple of questions. So the slide that talks about the committees and the topics that you guys are engaged with, does that thing also include discussions about the ODHS child abuse line? And do you also have discussion with the unions about aligning messaging for early childhood educators about the coming ban on suspension and expulsion? Is this something that it is integrated here?
Yeah, great question. So there isn't anything about the child abuse hotline, but the suspension expulsion prevention program, they're very much involved in. So they have members on the committees. There's an advisory committee and then the rules advisory committees as well. So they will be a part of those conversations. It's not specifically called out in I think it says like licensing, professional development, and we kind of view that as professional development because there will be technical assistance involved. There's lots of components of that, of making sure that people can have the supports that they need in order to follow through with the suspension expulsion prevention plan. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Anybody else? Okay, well, our contact info is up on the slide. I'll also put it in the chat. If you have any questions about the contract or about what was presented today, I am available to help, and NAJA is as well. So thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Allison and Naja. Appreciate it. Okay, and let me pull up the slides for our strategic planning conversation. One quick sec. The computer's just been going really slow this morning. Okay.
Thanks, Gabby. I'm happy to kick us off. So we kind of have just team tagging here. And thanks, Nadja, for joining. Just following the chat here. So we are here, we have about, what is it, an hour-ish or so, a little less than, but we wanted to at least get us kick-started in a conversation around strategic planning. And this is specifically strategic planning as now the Department of Early Learning and Care. We'll give a little bit more background as to, why this conversation is happening. And although we're here today, happy to return also, and then we'll kind of just provide, different avenues for ongoing conversation around what this means. Before we jump into, I think it's always really helpful for us to ground ourselves again in what the mission, vision, values of DELC are. And I know we have folks here, I see Don, who helped, a lot with this work in terms of, really drafting and revising and putting out what the mission, vision, and values for DELC are. And I do want to say that there was a lot of conversation, a lot of feedback, a lot of back and forth, and to get this to the, in a way that would reflect the different community needs and then the different partner needs and values. So as we think about this, the values of equity, respect, trust, relationships, safety, continuous improvement, I think, highlighting and how that fits into a strategic plan, and integrity, of course. And we'll share a little bit more, as we were drafting these, there was a lot of feedback that was gathered. There were community conversations, we had conversations with childcare providers, we had conversations with caregivers, we had surveys. And so there's been a lot of data collection in preparation to becoming DELC and, in building policy option packages and legislative concepts over the last couple of years. And so I think today's conversation is not necessarily to say, hey, we haven't heard anything, we want to hear from you, but instead to elevate also what we have already heard and take that to inform, what the strategic plan that is coming up. But before we dive into that conversation, we wanted to, again, just lean in a little bit, do an overview of what DELC has, what we're doing. And I think the next slide here kind of draws out the conversation for today in a little bit of a highlight.
Also, just want to make sure you guys can see the slides because my computer's
them.
not telling me. Okay, great. I was like, hopefully I can see them. I hope you guys can. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I'll let you know, Gabby, if it doesn't move or something. But yeah, I can see it. So this slide here is just a little bit of overview of what we'll touch on. Hopefully, we get through it all today. If not, happy to come back and have a second part to this. But, doing a little bit of a legislative recap of what this long session looked like, what were some of the requests, what was approved, what was not, current and ongoing projects, an outline of the governor's expectations, which is where the strategic plan falls into. A feedback recap, again, just some high level themes of what we've heard over the last year or two, and then diving into conversation around this to help inform the strategic plan. So this is very high level, and if you have questions as we go through, I'm open to just capturing those in the chat as well, and trying to be flexible in addressing those as we go. So I'll hand it over to Gabby, and we can see the slides. So
okay. Great. Yeah. So just kind of want to give this group a quick, over the next slides, it's just going to be a pretty, I think, relatively quick legislative recap for what DELC is going to be implementing and what passed in 2023. Granted, it's not everything that directly affected DELC. So like we didn't include the OPK rule change, which passed on here. It's really just things that we're going to be working on implementing. So to kick things off, House Bill 2504 is something that passed, and the effective date is January 1st of 2024. And this is going to direct DELC to streamline the process of foreign degrees to be accepted to meet qualifications to work in a licensed childcare facility. House Bill 2683, the employment-related daycare eligibility for child welfare involved and other groups of families. So this will allow child welfare involved families, which includes foster families, to be eligible for ERDC effective July of 2025. It'll also expand ERDC benefits to additional groups of families like teen parents and families experiencing houselessness and domestic violence in July 1 of 2027. House Bill 2468 will allow providers' own children, if they are between the ages of 10 and 12 years of age, to not count towards the licensing ratio. Let me see. Unless the child has special needs or a disability that requires a heightened level of care. So this will allow the ELC to adopt rules with reasonable requirements for landlords and tenants who operate certified family child care homes in a tenant dwelling. House Bill 2717, the outdoor preschool program. It amends ORS 329A.280 to add an outdoor childcare program to list of facilities to be licensed by the Office of Child Care, or in this case, the Child Care Licensing Division, because that name changed. And the rules will be adopted by the ELC. House Bill 2727, the Early Learning and Care Facility Expansion Work Group. This directs the Department of Land Conservation and Development to convene a work group to examine the strategies for expanding early learning and care facilities in Oregon and identify current barriers and challenges. I know we've heard a lot about the zoning codes. So this is something that the Department of Land Conservation and Development is really kind of going to take the lead on. House Bill 2991 directs DELC to commission a study on barriers to entry in the early learning workforce and will allow DELC to convene a work group to review findings and make any necessary recommendations. It will also direct DELC to address barriers in the Oregon registry for translating and accrediting foreign language degrees. And then I think this might be the last one. We might have one more. House Bill 3005, the Child Care Infrastructure Fund, established the Child Care Infrastructure Fund to be administered by the Oregon Business Development Department, or Business Oregon, as most of you might know it, for grants and loans for any costs associated with developing, building, and renovating early learning facilities. House Bill 3198, the Early Literacy Success Initiative, established the Early Literacy Success Initiative and created 3 new grant programs. I know Alyssa talked a little bit about this in the beginning. And then Senate Bill 1040, the micro centers, which directs DELC to create a pilot program to develop a sustainable model for micro centers to provide affordable, high quality early learning opportunities in Oregon. So, and I know that there's been some movement in that. I haven't been directly in those conversations, but I do know that there has been some movement in terms of getting that started and more info to come. What is DELC working on? So DELC is in the process of implementing recently passed legislation, but has identified several key areas of focus. So in regards to the Early Childhood Suspension and Expulsion Prevention Program, internally, we're coordinating across teams to ensure that we are all collaborating. And externally, there is an advisory committee and progress report. Within employment-related daycare, or ERDC, internally, we're working with ODHS and OEP at Oregon. It's not Oregon Employment, is it?
Oregon Eligibility Partnership.
Thank you. The Oregon Eligibility Partnership to implement and maintain the waitlist while we're developing ongoing communications and strategies. Externally, we're working with partners to refine and expand resources and materials for providers and families. Within operations development and improvement, internally, we're continuing to define, develop, and refine internal policies, processes, and procedures for agency and program operations. And externally, we are engaging with community partners to identify areas for improvement and gaps in existing structures. With the Birth Through 5 Literacy Plan, again, I know Alyssa kind of touched on that in the beginning. Strategic planning, this is kind of the first step that we're taking into that. And we'll go into a bit more detail on that as the slides kind of continue on. And then we're also working on the Child Care Development Fund state plan.
Thank you, Gabby. I know there was a lot about what was passed, what's, timelines. So I kind of want to just pause and address questions just to kind of recap. I wanted to do this because I think it's helpful for, again, those who might I know that there's been some transitions, so just to kind of reground ourselves in what is happening and what's in the works, to take that as context for the strategic plan that we're building for the future, right? So there were questions about the ECSEP, so the suspension and early childhood suspension and expulsion
Expulsion
prevention.
prevention program.
I swear I have it. I don't know if there's anyone here can specifically talk about that. I'm not aware. Alyssa?
They should be coming out soon, Renee. I know that there had been some follow-up questions, but when I had an update about a week ago, we should be issuing notices of intent to award in the next week or so. So that should be coming through shortly. And our progress report is a report that we're going to issue in January to kind of recap where we are and sort of what's ahead to support that program.
And then there was another question, Alison, again, not sure if you know the answer to this one, but is there any funding to support the suspension, expulsion, and prevention program other than the RFA that just recently closed?
No, Begonia, the legislature did not fund our request to expand that program. So part of what this progress report is going to do is really explain how the suspension, expulsion, prevention program is inclusive of all of the professional learning investments that had been made over the last several years, including the $25 million of biennium for professional learning in the early learning account of the Student Success Act, and how infant early childhood mental health consultation is sort of the least funded, least available component of that prevention program, which is what the dollars have been dedicated towards from suspension, expulsion, prevention. So trying to really paint the picture and put the pieces together for folks, hopefully to set up a conversation in the 25 session where we can successfully see additional investment in that program.
So Alicia, if that is the case, is there any discussion internally, or did you hear anything about changing the date from July 2026? Knowing that there's no funding this year, whatever funding will be in 2025, it will be for the next biennium, that it is already 2026, right? So is there any indication that this timeline there might be flexibility?
So the timeline is in statute. So to move away from that would require a statutory change in a bill to be passed. What we are looking at is what flexibility we have on the enforcement front. We know that there are not sufficient supports to really effectively mitigate the reasons behind the suspension, expulsion practices in childcare. So we're working on where we have some flexibility in that enforcement to not kind of go to extremes until there are more resources and supports. And our hope is that that report can help kind of articulate that in more detail. But we do not have the ability to change that date without a statutory change.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Then the question around the entity to support the programs, providing the IECMHC programming.
We're still working with Trauma Informed Oregon, Renee, as the sort of central entity, but continuing to evaluate, whether that's the long-term model. So that's the model we're working with right now. And once we have the regional entities, I know one of the reflections is that there were varying levels of readiness and varying interpretations of the type of support from the entities. And so I think once we have all those regional entities identified, it'll give us a clearer vision of what that central entity needs to be able to offer to support the regional arms.
Great questions. And thank you for asking those. And thanks, Alyssa, for jumping in on those. We can, I think, move on to our the next portion here and diving into a little bit more of the strategic plan and why. This next slide actually speaks a little bit about the governor's expectations, which I can kind of address based on what we have here. But as the Governor Kotek came in, there's been a request for, there's been, all agencies have received a list of expectations that I can say I am not fluent in, and that's totally okay for me to not be fluent in. But one of those is definitely the strategic plan, right? And so agencies are required to develop and follow the strategic plan using goals outlined by the governor's office. And so they've also provided, a template and just an outline and structure for what this might look like. And so these plans are intended to be developed with an agency leadership and in partnership with community partners and direct service employees. We can kind of see the list here: tribes, underrepresented communities, applicable boards, and anyone responsible for the oversight of an organization. So everyone that's really tied in with, working with an agency and organization. And there are some specifics there right around like aligning agencies' information technology strategy and support goals for the organization. So the idea here is that the plan should be completed by June 1st of 2024. And that sounds like a while from now, but realistically, right, like we know it takes time to have the conversations, it takes time to draft this, and it takes time to just make sure that it's in a completed manner. And so we have actually, before I jump into a timeline here, in terms of the strategic plan, I'd say that DELC is situated in this positive lens and just, I think, good intersection of timing where, having just been established as a Department of Early Learning and Care, and so establishing operations as a new agency, having just released, if you could go to the next slide, Gabby. So having been established as an agency, the recent update of the Raise Up Oregon, and so Raise Up Oregon, 2.0, and then establishing policy and programs and some of the legislation that we just recapped that is from previous years that we're still working on or developing, and some of the most recent ones were this latest legislative session. So those are all pieces and bodies of work that are happening that will inform the strategic plan moving forward, in addition to feedback that we have received and are intentionally seeking out in the next few months. Some of the goals from Raise Up Oregon that we wanted to highlight as we dive into today are outlined here, right? We have this 3 system goals, and just want to leave them there. Let us reflect on them a little bit more. But this is a commitment that we have, and so there are several of the, within the goals, there are strategies that DELC is specifically called out to do, and we want to also use that as the parameters that we're working with and within as we move forward in developing the strategic plan, and just as we think about priorities and ensuring that we stay focused as we move forward in the next 5 years. The timeline for engagement, and really this is, the timeline for the strategic plan development, but thank you, Gabby. You can see here the feedback and information gathering period, which we're starting here in November. We've kind of been dabbling and tapping in and just kind of raising awareness about strategic planning and what's to come since mid or late October, just wanting to let people know, right, that this is a conversation that we'll be having, and just opening that door for feedback and conversation. And so we'll continue a conversation between November, December, early January if necessary, and then identify common themes and findings, in addition to, again, what some of the things that we've heard in the past. And then a significant portion of that will be the strategic plan, but there are the internal components of this as well. So there is a team within DELC that is working on the strategic plan, because there are many moving parts, and just in that quick list that we gathered, right, operation pieces on this as well. And so with this, however, is also the CCDF state plan engagement. So we're kind of that timeline. There is an overlap of timeline. And so we're trying, we're collaborating with Jordan as well, who's leading some of that CCDF state plan work and engagement, so that we can have aligned conversations and have aligned goals as we possibly can, although there are some things that are going to just be really unique to the CCDF plan and others that will be unique to the strategic plan. But just, again, trying to have some alignment and organization as we move forward.
Karina, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to share is, as we've been putting this together, this is sort of the very high level version of this timeline, and what I think maybe we can make clear is the ongoing nature of this work. So we don't expect to be able to surface all the good thoughts and ideas in 30 days, right? So we have contracted with 2 vendors. So we're leveraging Alvarez and Marsal as well as Build Initiative to split this work in 2 ways. And you saw that visual that had operations, Raise Up Oregon, and sort of policy. Because we are a new agency, there will likely be a larger focus on operations than most agencies that have been around a long time might have. That usually tends to be like very internal, but we think it's important as a new agency to carve that out and set external goals for ourselves on the operations front. Similarly, we need to look at, we've been focused over the last 2+ years on designing, building, launching DELC, and we haven't been able to really put out a vision for what early learning and care looks like under kind of DELC's purview. And so we have the opportunity with the creation of Raise Up Oregon to sort of further define our section of that and those goals, objectives, and strategies and actions that really can be helping us drive towards a more focused mission and vision for DELC. And so we will continue this engagement in order to be able to hear from families, hear from you all, hear from community partners, from providers, and make sure that we're putting forward an ambitious yet achievable strategic plan over the next 3 to 5 years. And so while we have some key deadlines with when these vendors will kind of end their bodies of work, in part because of the federal funding sources that we've tapped into to cover this. We also want this work to be ongoing. And one of the things we've been thinking about is how we sort of make this a true living plan and something that can continue to evolve depending on the outcome of legislative sessions, for example, and as the needs of community grow and change. So that's something that will be a part of this going forward. And Margie will have a part on hubs. Go ahead, Gabby.
Oh, no, I was just going to bring attention to the question if that's what you're answering, Alyssa.
Yeah, I think we have a slide possibly, but I'm happy to jump into it. So Margie, hubs are a big part of this. You all obviously have direct connections in your communities with families and childcare providers. So we'll want to leverage your insight and expertise in developing our strategic plan. We are also working on an advisory group structure. We have time on Thursday. We've got like a whole day retreat to figure out how we're going to roll this strategic plan out and put it together. And so we're actually requesting that there is 1 to 2 representatives from the hubs. We don't know yet if it'll be 1 or if it'll be 2. We're asking similarly the CCR&Rs to put forward 1 to 2 representatives, and we're continuing to kind of define and scope who all will be in that advisory group. But that would be a table for kind of touch points and ongoing input and feedback as the plan is developed, in addition to the kind of upfront information and feedback that we get from you all to inform the development of the plan.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yeah, and I actually don't think that I have a slide on that, so thank you for covering that. Okay, and kind of just to recap, because I know that there's been several conversations in the past where DELC has kind of come to this group and other community partners and kind of asked, for feedback in terms of like increasing access to resources, or really kind of, what DELC can do to better assist you. So just kind of recapping what we've heard in the past. We've heard not just from this group, but from other groups as well, that there is a need to increase access to resources and supports for any children experiencing disabilities. And this would support inclusive and responsive early learning and care settings. We've also heard that there is a need to expand the network of support for families, especially those for families with children experiencing disabilities. There's also a need to embrace and empower parents, guardians, and families as partners in the early learning system, and to continue to engage in conversations and co-creations with communities and expanding the engagement efforts and including compensation for communities for those who are participating and taking the time to assist us. There's also a need for language and culturally diverse staff to support refugee families and children. And again, I know this isn't everything that we've heard, but just kind of some things that kind of overlapped from other groups as well. So kind of just wanted to tie that into this slide and just, this is what we've heard in the past. And just wanted to highlight this. I know that there's been more as well, but just kind of wanted to highlight these things. And then,
do you mind going back, Gabby? I just
yeah.
kind of too.
Hang on, let me see. There we go. Oh, there we go.
Thank you. I think just echoing Gabby, some of these things, outlined here, and we've already kind of shared, some of the places where we've heard, and of course, conversations coming from this table, conversations as we've developed, guiding principles for policies and practices, as again, mission vision, a lot of these conversations that we had as we were developing and launching DELC, and wanted to come back and highlight these. And then in the next slide that Gabby just quickly shared, we have some questions that for us, we're kind of just laying out as conversation starters. And I know we have, limited time today, but kind of wanted to share these and start diving into. And I recognize, this might be, I don't know, third time in this group, several of us are not here consistently, but just want to emphasize that regardless of, although we've had transitions and there's not, transitions within the hubs, that we are working as much as we can collaboratively and really trying to, listen to what are the needs in your communities and your regions. And so if you would allow us the opportunity to listen to you all, kind of discuss and brainstorm these questions. And so there's 4 questions here. There's definitely some overlap. In addition to time today, wanting to open communication, between Gabby and myself for additional conversations or additional feedback, whether in writing or, via Zoom call or a phone call, just recognizing that there are nuances sometimes that we can't get to in a large group and with limited time. But I'd love to just kind of get us started with the first question here. And actually, before I launch into questions, I want to pause. Do we have any questions around what we've shared so far and where we are in the strategic planning conversation? Okay.
And also just to add to that, if any questions do stem after the meeting, feel free to send them to me and Karina. Like she said, regardless of time, right? We do want to make sure that you all are open to reaching out to us. So feel free, if anything comes up after the meeting, feel free to send it to me or Karina. And we're happy to. Yeah.
Abby, is there I know we also don't have all the directors here today. Any feedback from folks on the best way for us to have these conversations with you all and kind of get this input and feedback? Do you feel like you've already shared this with us in other platforms? Just want to think about timing and the holidays coming up in November. Feels like it's basically over, even though it's only the 7th, and how we do this well with you without adding another burden to your plate.
Thank you, Kelly. Go ahead.
So I just have to say, Karina and Gabby, you're doing a great job today. Thank you for hosting this meeting and facilitating the conversation. Truly, you're doing a great job. I think the best way to get information like this, to really get answers, thoughtful answers, without just getting pages and pages of narrative, because that's what I started doing, was starting to type, I think, is to have one-on-one conversations. And maybe you deploy 4 different people that meet with 4 different early learning hub directors and ask these questions. And to give an hour. If you can schedule that in, and I know, I think that would be a real strength. And I suppose that's one of the things that I've seen is really the desire of the DELC to make one-on-one connections with people. And I know it's been really difficult over the last several months as you've been standing up the agency, but it's appreciated and it's noticed.
Thanks for that, Kelly. That's really helpful. And I think we can look at how to divide and conquer there.
That is, Kelly. And I think that was, as we're looking at time here, Tim, I'm not a fan of doing rush conversations. It doesn't, it takes time to get our minds going. I was, hence why as we've been able to just kind of tapping different spaces and saying, hey, this is coming up, just to kind of prime, our minds around it. So that is actually really helpful feedback, Kelly. And we can definitely look into how to have smaller group conversations. I'm happy to kind of leave these questions here. And if there are any thoughts that you really want to share to any of these that, we didn't address in the previous slide around what we've already heard, please do. Do so now, either in chat or raise your hand. And we can also follow up and, when Maria's back, and check in around connecting for some of those further conversations. And I think to illustrate your point, just recognizing that we have several folks who aren't here today and don't want to exclude anyone from the conversation, right? Or in response to the questions. Yeah. And that's definitely, if you have thoughts around these questions, we'll share some of the slides as well, as I understand, to write. I know sometimes for me, even it's easier to write something out and just, bullet point it or provide feedback in that way. So open to it in whatever way works best for you.
I apologize. I have to run to interviews. And so thank you all for the time. And I know Gabby and Karina will finish this out strong. And if you all need anything from me, please let us know.
Thank you, Abby. I appreciate, just your feedback there. And welcome. I know you introduced yourself a little bit in the chat earlier. So some context and that sounds like what I read there, though, is that a little bit of a maybe like context setting that would be possible in a smaller setting, and then kind of one question at a time. Yeah, this is a lot on like one slide. I recognize this is a lot, and so we were thinking to Alyssa's point, right? I mean, we can do whether it's groups, whether it's different calls. We're just flexible but open to hearing from you what works. And we are outsiders to this table, right? I mean, we're DELC members, we're DELC staff, and recognize that you all have been working with each other and collaborating with each other for a long time as well. So I'm happy to leave it here for now with these questions. And we'll touch base with Maria again as she comes back. I know we have other folks who are here. We'll share these questions. If you have reflections that come up, even as we were having today's conversation or additional questions, please reach out to us. I'll go ahead and drop our information here in the chat. I know it's in the slide, but sometimes it's easier to just copy and paste. And let us know if you have reflections, feedback. We are open to all of it and incorporating that into the strategic plan as best as we can. Again, we'll be in these conversations through early January, so you can expect to see a little bit more from us, and hope that's okay with you all.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say the same, Karina, is that I know this is kind of going to be a multi-step thing. So this isn't going to be hey, we're just dropping this here and you won't see me and Karina again. Yeah, leaving these questions here. And I do appreciate the feedback for one-on-one conversations. And I'm hoping that that's something that we can, kind of just do, so that if it's one-on-ones or just smaller groups, really just want to be respectful of all of your times too, because I know that you are all also very busy.
Well, before we jump off, any other just questions? And I kind of want to bring it back to any highlights from your work because it just sounds like a good way to finish it off. But ooh, Kelly, you're okay, retiring before the 15th. Okay. This time will be assistant director. Anything else you want to share with us?
I think a lot of folks met Rod at our early learning collaborative recently, so he's not brand new to everyone, but he needs to start transitioning into these roles. So I'll start inviting him.
Okay.
Perfect. And Kelly, I can get him added because I think I have the December one. It's still under me, and then Maria can get him added to the others.
Thank you. And the other thing that I'd say is I would have had him today, but we have a I don't know, 22 people from our 3-county region that are attending the Northwest Early Learning and Pyramid Summit in Seattle this week. So that's pretty exciting. We're getting people, getting the team built around the pyramid model. A lot of, probably half of those people are service providers, you know, not early learning hub people, but different child care providers. We did the recruitment through our coordinated enrollment network. So it's pretty cool. Pretty excited to see what they come back with.
Wonderful.
Great. Begonia, good to hear. Tomorrow you guys are assembling the Curiosity kits. What time?
All day long. Actually,
All
we
day long.
have 2 shifts. So if any of you want to join us, you're gonna have a lot of fun. You're gonna be doing your steps, your workout. No need to go to the gym tomorrow or the 15th. We will provide that thing to you as well.
I love it. Yeah.
Can
and
you share
congrats,
what those
Maria.
kits look like when you're
Sure.
done? Begonia, we want to see them.
I can show you something but it's missing a couple of items. But those items are already here, but I can show you a picture that it is from last week. You want to see it?
Send it over. Yeah, I don't know if you want, however you want to drop it in or screen share it, whatever.
Yeah, send it.
Well, you have to allow me to share, but you are not.
Oh, okay. I might have powers.
Oh, here, let me stop sharing then maybe.
Oh yeah, that probably would help.
That helps. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Oh.
ready. Ooh.
Yeah. So it's missing the fruit set, the activity sheet, as well as the washable paint, but this is how it's gonna look like.
Oh.
Thank you for sharing, Begonia. I'll say I've been leaning into curiosity, you know, just as an adult, it's sometimes we forget. And so just kind of seeing this as a reminder. So thank you.
Yeah. Love it. And then Margie, I did see your hand, Margie Lowe. I did see your hand. I just wanted to come back and see if there is a question or comment.
Well, we just want to celebrate that our Imagination Library has been expanding with lots of community support from private as well as local government support, and that to really celebrate it, we're going to have a float at the Salem Holiday Parade on December 1st. So we'd love to see you all there.
Count me in. Thank you, Margie.
So Gabby, before this meeting ends, I would love to just talk for a few minutes about the council retreat.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know if you and Karina have more to do on the strategic plan.
No, this was our essentially this was our final topic. Literally the only slide that we didn't show was a question slide, but I know Karina dropped our email addresses in the chat. So yeah, Sue, by all means, please.
Okay, thanks. Hi, you all. Good to see you again. I wanted to just give you a really quick update about the council retreat that we had in Bend a week or 2 weeks ago, maybe. And sort of the piece that really pertains to you all most directly is that we've set 4 priorities for the council to work on and really focus on in the coming year. And hubs are one of the 4. And so one of the ways in which the council decided we want to start working more closely with you all, you're going to love hearing this, is to set up one-on-one phone calls with each of the hub directors. And I realize that's what you're asking Karina and Gabby for on this DELC strategic plan. This isn't going to be DELC focused. This is going to be system focused, right? So I just wanted to, especially as I listened to Karina and Gabby talking with you about one-on-one phone calls, I want to warn you that each of you is going to be hearing from one of the council members asking to set up a 1-hour phone call sometime before the holidays end, if not before they get in full force. Really trying to focus on, what sectors are you most closely aligned with? Which sectors are at your tables and really engaged? Are there sectors where you wish they were more engaged than they are? And then also looking at resources. What resources would be needed by you to really be able to implement Raise Up Oregon in your regions? And it can't be a pie in the sky. It needs to be very realistic about, in the 2025 session, what would hubs want to be asking for to really do the work that you're expected to do. So just wanted to put that out there, let you know that you will be hearing from one of us. And as you probably know, there's a lot of turnover on the council. We're going from 9 members, well, sort of 8 members to 11. And 5 of those are brand new people. So just want to let you know that there are going to be a lot of new faces at the council, which is very, very exciting. And unfortunately, Ann Kubich and Cully Thornlad have cycled off the council. So they will be big losses, but we've got great people coming in behind them. So, and there's my dog. So anyway, thanks for all the work you do. I really appreciate you all. As you know, I'm a fan, and I'll look forward to talking with some of you in the next couple of weeks. I'll answer questions if you have any.
Yeah, Sue, just wanted to flag that Kelly did mention that some of them go on winter break on December 18th. So I made a note of that, and I'm happy to just send you an email so that council members can kind of keep that in mind as they reach out to hub directors.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Kelly. And we're sure going to be trying to do it before mid-December. And hopefully we can find 1 hour on each of your calendars, lining up with 1 hour on the council members' calendar, so that we can make this happen. It'd be ideal to do it before our December 6th council meeting, but we'll see if that's possible. So.
Great, thank you, Sue. Appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you. So what I hear is that we're going to be competing for one-on-one time.
Yes. And I mean, everyone's probably competing for everyone's time, right?
No, I agree.
Crazy these days. And one point I want to make is that the reason the council is so focused on hubs is because you are also the multi-sector tables that are set in the region. So, our success in building this early childhood system in a way is totally dependent on how successful you are. And we know you have a lot of partners at the table, and many of them are early childhood focused partners, but you all have that unique space that we have of having agencies at your tables. And that's why the council is so intent upon really partnering with the hubs and figuring out how do we support the work that we're asking you to do and hoping we can support you in doing. So I want to kind of draw that line there.
Great. And Begonia, I saw you kind of raise your hand and then put it down.
Yeah, I have a question. In one of the previous slides, you actually show something about better serving the refugee community. And I know that the ODHS Office of Refugees actually talking to you guys about how to align things and better serve the refugee community. Where is that thing landing? If there is anything solidified about that.
I can follow up, Begonia. I don't know the answer to that. Karina kind of just okay. I can get an answer for you and then follow up with you just to kind of see where that has landed. I'll just make a note to myself.
Thank you, Begonia. And I think it is a flag, right? And I think even to what Termler was saying of there are pieces that might be, Doug specific, and then there's going to be the collaboration, right? And so that's just as we always think about young children and families, there's the intersection of services and agencies. So we'll dig into that a little bit because not in my realm, but appreciate it.
Okay, anything else before we kind of just close out the meeting? Okay, well, more to come for sure. It was really great to see all of you. And thank you, for joining. I know there was a lot of conflicts today, but appreciate seeing all of you.
Yeah. And thanks for your grace and bearing with us, different new faces perhaps. So appreciate it. Appreciate your flexibility and understanding. So we'll see you again soon, and please share any questions that you might have.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Adios.